Here's something that's going to change how you look at wealthy people forever. Not all rich people are the same, and I don't just mean their bank accounts. I mean the way they got rich, the way they think about money, and the way they act when no one's watching. It's completely different depending on who you're looking at. And here's the thing. Most people lump everyone with money into one giant bucket. Oh, they're rich. Full stop. That's it. But that oversimplification, it's actually costing you. Because if you don't understand which kind of wealth you're looking at, you can't learn from it. You can't spot red flags. And honestly, you might not even recognize the right role models when they're standing right in front of you. So today, we're breaking it all down. 15 types of rich people, their mindsets, their habits, their blind spots, and what you can actually take away from each one. Before we start, I want you to hold on to 2 questions as we go through this list. Question 1. Which of these types have you already met in real life? Question 2. Which type do you actually want to become? Because here's the mistake most people make. They see someone with a nice car, a big house, or a fancy vacation on Instagram, and they either feel bad about themselves or they try to copy behaviors that look like wealth but aren't actually connected to building it. Wealth isn't a look, it's a structure. And once you understand the 15 categories, you'll never misread the signals again. One quick note before we dive in. Everything here is for educational purposes only, not individualized financial advice. Always consult a financial professional for decisions specific to your situation. All right, let's go. The overnight rich. These are the people who got wealthy faster than they got wise. Maybe they went viral. Maybe they hit at exactly the right moment in crypto, an app, or a side hustle that exploded. They weren't building toward wealth. Wealth just showed up one day. And the problem isn't the money. The problem is there's no financial foundation underneath it. Think about this. Someone who builds $500,000 over 15 years has had 15 years to develop habits, make mistakes on a small scale, and learn how compounding actually works. Someone who makes $500,000 in 6 months? They've had 6 months. That gap in financial literacy is enormous. These folks tend to lifestyle inflate almost immediately. They're not bad people. They're just unprepared. And a lot of them are back at square one within 3 to 5 years. Not because they're irresponsible by nature, but because no one taught them the basics before the windfall arrived. The takeaway? Wealth without financial education has an expiration date. The real estate grinder. These are some of the most disciplined people on this list. And ironically, some of the most underestimated. They're not flashy. They're not throwing parties. They're driving a used truck, living in a modest house, and quietly buying their 3rd rental property. Their strategy is simple and proven. Use income to buy assets. Let those assets generate more income. Repeat. They talk a lot about cash flow, appreciation, and equity. And if you've ever been trapped in a conversation with one at a barbecue, you know exactly what I mean. Here's the real picture. In many parts of the U.S., a well-managed rental property in a mid-tier city can generate $800 to $1,200 per month in net cash flow. Do that with 5 properties over 20 years. You're looking at financial independence that doesn't require a salary. They're not rich today by most definitions, but they're building something real, brick by brick. The takeaway? Patience plus leverage plus time is an underrated wealth formula. The invisible rich. You've met this person and had no idea. They shop at Target. They drive a Honda. Their watch didn't cost more than $200. And they've had a net worth north of $2 million for the last decade. This is the type that financial researchers call the stealth wealthy. And studies consistently show they're disproportionately satisfied with their lives compared to almost every other category on this list. Why? Because they built wealth to feel secure, not to look impressive. Their identity isn't tied to their balance sheet. They don't need external validation to confirm their financial decisions are working. The Millionaire Next Door, a well-known book studying American millionaires, found that the majority of U.S. millionaires live in non-luxury homes, drive non-luxury cars, and are first-generation wealthy. They're right next to you. You just can't tell. The takeaway? The loudest money in the room is rarely the most money in the room. The corporate climber rich. This person played the system and won. Not through luck, not through inheritance. Through promotions, stock options, RSUs. That's restricted stock units, basically company shares that vest over time as part of compensation, and a 401k they maxed out every single year for 30 years. They're the VP of something at a Fortune 500 company, or maybe a director-level manager at a firm no one's ever heard of. Their income grew steadily, maybe from $60,000 in their 20s to $220,000 by their 50s, and they invested the delta instead of spending it. A lot of people underestimate this path because it doesn't make for a great YouTube thumbnail. But compounding a 401k for 30 years at a historical average return of around 7% per year can turn $500 per month into over $600,000. And that's just the 401k. Add RSUs, profit sharing, and a paid-off home. The math gets very interesting. The takeaway? The boring path done consistently produces extraordinary results. The tech wealth builder. These are the people who turned an idea, or a very specific set of skills, into equity. They're often the quiet person at the table, maybe awkward in social settings, definitely wearing something they didn't think much about when they put it on. But their mind is running at full speed every single moment. Some of them exited a startup. Some of them joined a tech company early enough to get equity before the IPO. Some of them built a SaaS product, software as a service, think subscription apps, in their spare bedroom and sold it for 7 figures. What separates them isn't genius, it's leverage. They found ways to make their time and knowledge worth exponentially more than a salary. One product can serve 10,000 customers simultaneously. One equity stake can grow 50 times without requiring 50 times more hours. And here's something most people don't know. The fastest growing segment of tech wealth creation in the US isn't Silicon Valley billionaires. It's mid-level engineers and early-stage employees who got equity in companies that quietly went from $10 million to $300 million in valuation. The takeaway? In tech, the biggest wealth multiplier isn't salary, it's ownership. The philanthropic rich, these are the people who have so much that their primary occupation became giving it away strategically. Some came from family money. Others built it themselves, sold the company, and now sit on foundation boards. Either way, their relationship with wealth shifted from accumulate to deploy. Here's what's interesting about this group. They're often some of the sharpest strategic thinkers you'll ever meet. Because running a foundation or a giving portfolio at scale is genuinely complex. Where do you put $50 million to create the most sustainable impact? That's not an easy question. What people don't often see is the loneliness of it. A lot of philanthropic rich people struggle to know whether relationships are genuine or transactional. That's a real psychological cost of being wealthy at that level. The takeaway? Generosity at scale requires just as much skill as building wealth did in the first place. The celebrity wealthy, athletes, entertainers, actors, social media creators who blew up on the right platform at the right time. Here's the uncomfortable truth about this category. The income is often enormous, and the window is often short. The average NFL career lasts about 3.3 years. The average recording artist has maybe 1 to 2 albums with real commercial traction before the market moves on. The shelf life of fame is a financial variable that most people inside this world deeply underestimate. The ones who make it to long-term wealth aren't necessarily the biggest names. They're the ones who hired the right financial team early, diversified into business ownership, real estate, or equity stakes, and treated their career income as a funding mechanism for their real wealth-building strategy, not as the strategy itself. The cautionary tale here is real and well documented. Multiple professional athletes have filed for bankruptcy within 5 years of retiring, and almost always, the pattern is the same. Lifestyle expenses locked in at peak income levels. No investment portfolio to replace the earned income when it stops. The takeaway? High income and high net worth are two very different things. Never confuse them. The inheritance generation. This is the group everyone talks about and almost no one understands accurately. Yes, Some people who inherit significant wealth are exactly what you'd imagine: entitled, disconnected from the value of money, and convinced the world owes them something. That type exists. But here's what's less talked about. A large portion of the inheritance generation is quietly terrified. Terrified of losing what their family built. Terrified of making decisions that embarrass the family name. Terrified that people around them are only there for the money. Studies on intergenerational wealth transfer in the U.S. show that roughly 70% of family wealth is lost by the second generation and 90% by the third. The challenge isn't just spending. It's that wealth without financial education and emotional context is extremely difficult to maintain. The ones who break that pattern, they take the inherited foundation and add purpose to it. They treat it not as an entitlement, but as a starting advantage that still requires effort and discipline to build on. The takeaway? Inherited wealth without inherited wisdom is a ticking clock. The serial entrepreneur rich. These people are wired differently, and I mean that with complete respect and just a little bit of humor. They can't sit still. Their phone is always going off. They have 3 businesses in 3 different industries, and they're somehow genuinely excited about all of them. Their attention span in a meeting is approximately 7 minutes before they're sketching something on a napkin. But here's the thing, that restlessness is engineered. It's not chaos. It's a specific kind of mind that thrives on the early stage energy of building. And the moment a company stabilizes and becomes a management challenge rather than a creation challenge, they're already mentally on to the next one. Their risk tolerance is sky high, and their failure rate is also sky high. Most serial entrepreneurs have failed at least as many times as they've succeeded. The difference is they reframe failure as tuition, and they keep paying into that education until one of the bets produces life-changing returns. The takeaway? Resilience and risk tolerance, practiced consistently, eventually compound just like money does. The don't ask, wealthy. Every town has one. Every industry has a few. This is the person whose wealth doesn't have a clean explanation. There's no company they built, no portfolio you can trace, no product you've ever seen. They're just wealthy, have been for years, and the details are permanently vague. Now, to be clear, not every don't ask wealthy person is doing something illegal. Some people are genuinely private. Some come from family situations that are complicated. Some made money in ways that are legal but politically sensitive in their community. But the tell for the truly murky version of this type is the absence of any paper trail, combined with a very sudden reputation cleanup, moving into respectable business ownership, showing up on community boards, donating to visible causes. The appearance of legitimacy can be a product, just like anything else. The financial lesson here isn't be suspicious of everyone. It's don't benchmark your financial life against wealth you can't understand or verify. If you can't trace how someone got their money, you can't learn from it, and you probably shouldn't be trying to replicate it. The takeaway? You can't reverse engineer a path you can't actually see. The trend rider rich, crypto, NFTs, AI tools, whatever comes next. This is the person who was early, and more importantly, stayed disciplined enough to actually convert early positions into real, lasting wealth, rather than riding the wave all the way back down. Here's the honest picture. The majority of people who made money in crypto or early tech trends gave a significant portion of it back by overstaying their position or reinvesting all gains back into the same speculative category. The ones who are genuinely wealthy from this type of strategy are the ones who used the trend as a launchpad. They cashed out portions at strategic points, moved gains into traditional assets, index funds, real estate, private equity, and treated the trend income as an asymmetric opportunity rather than a permanent income model. An index fund tracking the S&P 500 has returned roughly 10% annually on average over the last 30 years. Holding some percentage of your gains in boring, diversified instruments isn't a downgrade. It's how you keep what the trend gave you. The takeaway? Getting in early is talent. Getting out wisely is discipline. You need both. The creator economy rich. Authors, YouTubers, podcasters, newsletter writers with 400,000 subscribers and a sponsored deal that makes your salary look small. This is one of the newest categories on this list, and honestly, one of the most fascinating, because the economics of it were essentially impossible 20 years ago. A single YouTube channel monetized through AdSense, brand deals, and digital products can generate anywhere from $50,000 to multiple millions per year, depending on niche, audience size, and monetization strategy. The RPM, revenue per thousand views, for a finance or business channel in the US is typically between $15 and $40, sometimes higher. What makes this group interesting is the psychological challenge. Creator economy wealthy people live with an almost constant fear of irrelevance. The algorithm changes. Audiences evolve. A format that worked brilliantly in year 1 can feel stale by year 3. The income is real, but it comes with a stability cost that most traditional careers don't have. The ones who navigate this best treat their creator income as a business. They diversify revenue streams, build assets outside the platform, and think about intellectual property, not just content output. The takeaway? In the creator economy, your audience is your asset. Build it like one. The lucky bet rich. One swing, one massive payoff. This is the person who went concentrated, maybe put everything into one stock, one property in a city that exploded, one business they sold at exactly the right market peak, and it worked. Here's where it gets psychologically tricky. A successful high-concentration bet can rewire how someone thinks about risk forever. They made $800,000 in one move. Why would they ever diversify? Why would they ever settle for 7 to 10% annually when they did 400% in 18 months? This is called resulting, judging the quality of a decision by its outcome rather than by the quality of the process at the time. A good outcome from a risky process is still a risky process. It worked this time. That doesn't make it repeatable. The financially dangerous thing about this type is the sequel, the second big bet, made with even more confidence and even less caution. That's often where the story ends. The takeaway? One good outcome from a bad process is not a strategy. It's a data point. The advice selling rich. Okay, we have to talk about this one, because it's everywhere right now. These are the people who got wealthy primarily by selling the idea of wealth to others. Seminars, online courses, coaching programs, books about getting rich that are mainly funded by selling books about getting rich. To be clear, not all financial education is predatory. Some of it is genuinely valuable. A well-structured course that teaches you how to analyze a balance sheet, build an emergency fund, or understand how a Roth IRA works, an individual retirement account that grows tax-free, by the way, can legitimately change someone's financial trajectory. The red flag version of this type is characterized by vague promises about income. Students average $10,000 per month with no methodology. High price tags for access to information freely available elsewhere, and an emphasis on the lifestyle of the teacher rather than the results of the students. The question to ask before spending money on any financial education product is simple. Can I verify that the people who followed this specific advice got specific, measurable results? If that answer is murky, so is the value. The takeaway? Financial education has enormous value. Financial theater has enormous price tags. Know the difference. The married into it strategist. This one's on the list because it's real. It's more common than people admit, and it deserves honest treatment. Some people view marriage, or at minimum, romantic partnership, as a financial strategy. And here's the nuanced truth. There's a spectrum here. On one end, two people who are genuinely compatible, one of whom happens to have significant wealth, build a real partnership that's both emotionally and financially strong. That's not a strategy. That's just life. On the other end, a deliberate, calculated approach to entering relationships specifically for financial access, with limited emotional investment. That is a strategy, and it comes with psychological costs and practical risks. Hello, prenuptial agreements, that people who pursue it often underestimate. The financial lesson from this type is actually about something entirely different. Who you build your financial life with matters enormously. Research consistently shows that financial alignment, shared values around money, savings habits, and spending priorities is one of the top predictors of both relationship stability and long-term financial success. The takeaway? Your financial partner is one of the biggest financial decisions you'll ever make. What all 15 have in common? Now remember, I asked you 2 questions at the beginning. Which of these types have you met? And which do you want to become? Here's what's interesting. Across all 15 categories, the ones who build lasting wealth, not just the appearance of it, share 3 things. First, they own something: a property, a business, an equity stake, a portfolio. They're not just earning income, they're accumulating ownership. Second, they understand the basics. Even the most complex wealth in this list, at its core, rests on fundamentals. Spend less than you earn, invest the difference, let time do the compounding. Don't make catastrophic, unrecoverable mistakes. Third, they know which game they're playing. They're not trying to look like Type 7 when they're building like Type 2. They don't compare their Chapter 3 to someone else's Chapter 15. They have a clear internal scorecard, and the scorecard isn't Instagram. That last one? That's the one most people are still working on. If you're still here, this one's for you. The pre-wealthy. These are people who haven't arrived yet. But make no mistake, they are on their way. How do I know? Because of what they're doing right now. They're not scrolling mindlessly. They're not comparing themselves to people they can't trace. They're watching a 10-minute video about wealth archetypes because they genuinely want to understand how money works, who has it, and how it's built. This is the most under-discussed type on any list because it has no flash, no status, and no dramatic story. Yet, the pre-wealthy have an emergency fund they're building toward. The standard target is 3 to 6 months of expenses. They're contributing to their 401k at least up to the employer match, because that match is literally a 50% to 100% instant return on that contribution. They're reading, watching, questioning, and improving their financial vocabulary one term at a time. The gap between where they are and where they want to be isn't insurmountable. It's just a function of time, consistency, and not making the catastrophic mistakes that derail people in the early stages. That's you. That's who this channel is for. All right. We just covered 16 types of wealthy people, and I want to hear from you. Which type have you met in real life? And honestly, which type are you building toward? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one. If this video gave you a new way to look at wealth, give it a like. It genuinely helps more people find content like this. And if you want to keep building your financial knowledge, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video. I'll see you in the next one.